Trigger warning. Please note this episode contains a discussion of suicide, self-injurious behavior, depression, eating disorders, and or reference to other mental health disorders that may act as triggers. So please continue at your own discretion. I am not a doctor or medical professional. The information is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Welcome back to another episode of the Know Your Power podcast. I am your host, Julia Renee.
I am Kendall Graboff.
And today, guys, we have been graced with the magnificent presence that is Maddy Forberg.
Woo! The crowd goes wild.
Play, clap, audio clip.
I bet you we could put one on here. We really should do that.
I've been wanting to program our little roadcaster to have like different sounds.
Have you explored it? Like a
Never.
boo.
I want like a dun-dun-ch.
That'd be a good
for
one.
every punchline.
I'm just like afraid that like I'll say something and I'll push the wrong one and it's like I really struggled with blah 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 and I'm like yay!
Or like a cricket
but like
one.
that's like a good like comedic relief, you know?
That's true. I feel like I laugh anytime I'm uncomfortable anyway.
Lighten it up.
I do the same thing.
But yeah, guys, we have Maddy Forberg here. Hello, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
I know, I'm super excited to have you. Maddy and I met like literally not too long ago, but I've been following you for a long time. For a really long time, even like back when you were just strictly doing powerlifting. So today, guys, we're just going to dive into everything that is Maddy Forberg because we just met and I just know a little bit about her story, but I really don't know everything. And it's freaking incredible, whatever I've heard. So let's start from the beginning.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe not like birth, but
But like
24.
what got you here?
it was dark and then it was light.
I heard my mom.
I heard my mom.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, guys. It was so awesome to meet you maybe like a month or so ago, maybe a little bit more, but we had such a good time. It was such a genuine conversation, and she told me so much about her friends, where you live, and I was so excited to meet you guys. I was like, maybe
Thank
we
you.
have a girls' weekend because it's hard to meet other girls.
Yeah, it's hard. And like I feel like when you have a friend like Julia, like whoever she likes, I'm like, I know I'll like them immediately.
100%,
so I was really excited to meet you because same, I've been following you a long time and like have heard bits and pieces of your story from like social media, but like to dive deep is so much fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So in high school, I kind of got into fitness. I was working at a gym, and that was kind of the first time I was introduced to lifting. I just thought it would be a cool job. It wasn't like something that I was super passionate about at the time. And that kind of sparked my interest into training. So I was suffering with an eating disorder when I was like 15, from the age of like really 10 to, now pretty much I've struggled with my mental health. So I grew up in a very tumultuous childhood. We had a lot of tragedy happen. My dad died when I was really young, and my sister got into a really, really bad accident that really changed our family's lives. And so since then, just naturally, I struggled with depression and anxiety. And it got really bad when I was a kid. I was institutionalized about 5 times for my mental health just because I had such a hard grasp. I was self-harming. I was struggling with suicidal ideation. And thankfully, my mom had the resources to put me into help. I know not a lot of people get that kind of luxury, so I'm so grateful for that. But working at a gym, I was struggling with an eating disorder and doing so much cardio until I would like pass out, and it was just ridiculous. But that was my concept of fitness at the time, was I get really skinny and I do cardio and that's it. Until one day I saw my friends training at the gym, and they were just like picking up heavy weights and like grunting and like screaming and just being kind of obnoxious.
Yeah.
And I was like,
How I am now.
yeah, I'm like, that's
You're like,
me.
that looks fun.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, it's so cool to see people in the gym that are focused on enjoying it, like the capability of their body, because working at the front desk mixed with my own perception of fitness being like, yep, still got to lose those last 10 pounds. You're always hearing people saying that. And it was during a time where like powerlifting wasn't as popular, at least in my very small town and, where I lived. But I didn't really know anybody that would train for any other reason than losing weight. My mom did that. My brother didn't really work out very much. He was just he would go now and then. And none of my friends did either. So it was very refreshing to see that perspective of, I'm going to go to the gym to celebrate what my body can do and just challenge it. So in the midst of my eating disorder, that just rocked my whole world. So I was like, can you show me? Can I get involved? And so I started showing up at powerlifting meets just to watch and experience that. I was dating somebody at the time that was competing in powerlifting, and so I just got to be around that world a little bit more. And at the time, it was very male dominated. I know it is now, but women are finding their way into the weight section. Yeah. This is so cool. And yeah, so this had come right after a suicide attempt when I was 17. And it just was so life-changing for me to think of myself as capable and strong. And I just wanted to be those things. So that really drew me to doing powerlifting. But I've competed in powerlifting for years now, but I suffered an injury after competing in Worlds on the USA team, and that led me to bodybuilding. So that's where we are fitness-wise now.
Nice.
That's crazy. And guys, like, if you don't know and you don't follow her already, but she just did, like, kind of recently, you did your first wellness competition, right?
Yeah, last year was my first one, and then in July was my third.
Was that your national?
Yeah.
That was nationals. Okay. Yeah. And it's just crazy too, because we were talking about this the other day when we were telling our friends that we were interviewing you, and we were like, the fact that like you were able to transform your body from like being a power lifter, and then you had that muscle built up, and like transforming into wellness was kind of like super, I don't want to say easy because none of this is easy, but like you fit into the category so well because you had that muscle maturity that you built up from doing powerlifting. And we got our asses handed to us in our workout that we did with 2 powerlifters last week.
Oh, wow.
Because the training is so different. And we were like, wait, we're doing 5 reps only?
Yeah.
We're not doing like 10 to 12?
I kind of loved it.
Really?
I'm curious. I know we'll like backtrack and dive deeper into like your beginning, but do you currently train more like a power lifter, or did you completely change? I cannot talk today. Did you completely change your training style into fitting into like what bodybuilders usually do?
Yeah. So a big reason why I wanted to switch was my injury. I had really bad SI pain. And because of that pain and because of still having to compete, I started to really resent the training style and resent the sport itself. And I was like, well, you know, this changed my life. This sport saved me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into a place where I hate it, you know? So I was like, let's just take some time. Powerlifting will still be there. You know, let's do it when we feel drawn to it again.
Yeah.
So
that's a really awesome level of self-awareness, because so many times we think that we have to push and continue to do the thing that people kind of expect us to do. Like Kendall and I were talking about this yesterday, to where I grew up as a wrestler, she grew up doing gymnastics, and like there's a lot of like outside pressure that also gets put on you when you're really good at something to stay with it because you're good at it. And it's like, just because you're good at something, which you're really good at powerlifting, it's hard to move away from that like identity and move into something else, because you are really awesome at it, but there needs to be that level of self-awareness to know, okay, this season is kind of over and I'm ready to move into a new chapter.
Yeah, thank you for that. I kind of resonate on that with you, because I saw you posted something saying like, I haven't trained for a couple of weeks. I just didn't feel like it. And it's so hard in like the society we live in, because people are like, oh, you know, no days off, hustle harder, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, there's a small percentage of people that are like, everything in moderation, do what feels right. But yeah, that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, because I had put so much of my identity to powerlifting. And I was like, well, you know, a big part of my job is being on social media, being a coach. That's how people know me and that kind of thing. And so I thought, like, if I were to leave powerlifting, I would just lose all that. And it's like, but I can't do something I hate. And I can't do it because I'm in pain. So you can either try something new, and if it fails, it fails, but at least you're doing something again.
It's also very badass that you then switched sport styles and was like, I'm still going to compete though. Like, you still find like a new outlet for yourself. Cause I feel like my brother is an example. He's going to hate that I'm bringing this up, but he used to do like, not on your level, but powerlifting. And his first ever meet, he was spotted wrong and broke his knee and had to get surgeries.
And that was it.
And and he just was like, threw in the towel and was like, I'm just done weightlifting in general. And now he's back into it. It's been years, but it took so long. Like, it's admirable that you were able to like switch your motivation to a different outlet so quickly.
Thank you. I had realized that training is so good for my mental health, of like, I have a space where I can go to and just do something that's good for my body. I've never been good at running or anything like that. And so
same.
I'm slow.
We're built like rocks. Like, ask a rock
Our legs
to
don't
run.
move.
Yeah, we're going to roll. We're going to roll.
I'm bottom heavy, baby. Nah. So it was just like, you know, you have to do something for your health. You have to do something to move your body, you know. And I've never really considered myself a competitive person, but I feel like having a goal is something that really motivates me. So I was like, well, I'm not going to go from like, you know, being very regimented in the gym to nothing. Like I can have some kind of, you know, routine with it. So I had reached out to who my coach is now, Liv, and I originally wanted to do figure. I just thought it was such a cool physique.
Yes.
And
you would be good in
you would be good.
one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and coming from a powerlifting background, wellness was still pretty new, and I was like, I'm too fucking tough for that.
I'm too jacked, bro.
That's
I
so
get that.
girly.
I get that.
And it was so dumb because now I have so much appreciation for all of the physiques and how feminine and beautiful and masculine it all can be. But my coach was like, you know, if you wanted to do figure, we'd have to take years to kind of build up to that, which we can do. But wellness is something that you could, you know, we can train and see what happens, but that's something you could probably compete a lot sooner in. And yeah, but I really love the wellness physique. I don't think that I would, and who knows, maybe in years I'll change my mind, but I don't think I would switch to figure, just because I just love how the wellness looks right now.
Yeah, it's a very like, I'm just going to say it plain and simple. What girl doesn't want big glutes, big legs, a muscular upper body, but like not so muscular? Like,
It's still very feminine, like petite up top, which I like.
Yeah, and I think that's why the category is getting so full, because everyone wants a physique. Like, not everybody, I'm just saying that like it's an admirable physique. And so the category is getting filled so fast because they're like, oh, I want some of that. And I think it's awesome because there wasn't a in-between between bikini or figure. Like, it was either your bikini, which is like an X shape where you're just symmetrical on top and bottom, or you're more of like a triangle, which is kind of like figure. Figures to me is supposed to also be an X shape, which is a
shoulder to quad balance.
Yeah, they're the same, but to me, I think that it's more like upper body bigger than lower body, if I'm going to be honest. And wellness is the only category where they look for you to not be symmetrical,
Right? Yeah.
which is really cool.
I think what was enticing to me too is like wellness off season is still very much so like maintainable and like attractive to me. Versus like, because I too, when I was getting into it, I started with bikini and then I was like, well, my only other option is figure because wellness wasn't a thing yet. And I was like, I guess I could like try to push my upper body because I gain muscle in my arms pretty easily. So I was like, I could just train them more and go figure. But then I was looking at it objectively and I was looking at a lot of figure. I feel like Liv's an exception. I feel like she looks amazing year round. But there are some figure competitors. I look at them in their off season and I'm like, I don't think I would be comfortable carrying that much muscle mass around 24/7.
It's definitely a lot.
Yeah, and definitely up to like what everybody's goals are, but like you said, I love the wellness physique, especially in the off season, and I've always had big legs. Like, that's just where I naturally carry my fat, and mentally for me, getting into wellness, as somebody who grew up hating my legs, I was like, oh, nice thunder thighs, like
100% agree with that.
hated it. And in therapy as a kid, I had to like really work on reframing from my sister's accident. After it, she couldn't walk, and she can walk now, thankfully. It's very, her stride isn't great. Like, she wears like braces and stuff, but you know, it's amazing that she can walk in general. But in that between time of walking and needing the wheelchair 24/7, even as a kid, I would give my sister piggyback rides into the house.
Aww.
And so in therapy,
I love that.
Thank you. In therapy, I talked about like, well, I hate my legs, and the therapist being like, well, what's something that your legs allow you to do? And it was like, my legs allow me to carry my sister. It doesn't really matter what they look like. They enable me to do so much. And for me...
That gave me chills.
Thank you.
That's just really cute.
Get the goose pimples.
For me, getting into wellness was like, this is a category that appreciates the big legs, and this will help you love them because that matters.
Exactly. And I feel like the same thing can be with figure as well. Like, you know, women are told all the time to... I think more so not have a big upper body, and it's only okay to have like basically big glutes. So I think like I love that like the figure competitors and like beyond like the more muscular categories are kind of saying like F you, like I decide what I want my physique to look like. And that's what bodybuilding is. You are bodybuilding into a category and how you like your physique. We all just were like, I picked that one. That's what I pick. So I really want to go like back. I really want to go back to where it kind of all started, like where you felt kind of like at your lowest, like what age around that where you were kind of dealing with all of those mental health issues, like your family felt like it was kind of falling apart. How old were you then?
So my dad died when I was 5, and my sister's accident was the summer after. So I think I was able to put a name to depression around the age of 10 or 11, which is when I started self-harming about like 12. And I think I was hospitalized for the first time at 13. So around that time, I didn't, nobody talks to kids about depression, especially probably when we were growing up specifically. And before our generations, it wasn't really talked about. Mental health was really taboo. And so for me, I just felt, so numb and so alone. And it was so conflicting to feel this type of sadness, especially because my sister's surviving this incredible thing. Not out of jealousy, but just out of like, how can you be so sad when you're so capable? Like, this doesn't make sense. And so it was very frustrating to feel so numb, where it got to the point where I was like, I just don't want to be here. Like, I didn't have the verbiage to talk about suicide or anything like that, but it was just like, I don't want to be here.
Were you expressing that to anyone in your life at the time, or were you fully dealing with it alone?
Mostly alone. And then when I was maybe 11 or 12, I had a friend that actually self-harmed, and that was the first time I had seen it. And that kind of led me to exploring some negative coping mechanisms like self-harm.
I weirdly had like a very similar thing where I was around the same age, and someone in my school, like, it was then known and talked about, and I was like, I weirdly like idolized it.
Like, I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's an option. Like, that's something you can do, which is terrible. And like, I'm really hoping like our kids' generation can be that different, where like mental health is talked about like from the start.
Oh, I think it definitely is. And it's like crazy to think about too, that like you were 10, like around 10, 11, 12, like when this started happening. So just imagine like how much our brain is actually formed. Like, I bet it was really hard for you to express like, what is going on? Like, all of this is so new. Like, am I supposed to be feeling this? Like, you don't even know where your emotions are, like, quote unquote, supposed to be. So when was like the kind of turning point where you felt like there was some sort of light at the end of the tunnel? Because I know at times it really feels like you're at the very bottom of a well and it's so dark, and sometimes you're so far down in the well you can't see the light at the top, but then you start slowly crawling your way and you're like, oh, there's a little bit of light, there's a little bit of light. So what did that look like coming out of?
So I had struggled for a very long time, and it was kind of getting baseline between being inpatient and outpatient. I was in the marching band, and that was really cool, but it all kind of felt like everything blurred and never really got better, and sometimes was just taking steps to be worse. So when I was a junior in high school, I was sexually assaulted, and that lack of control over my body in my head really started my eating disorder, because I just didn't feel like I existed in my body. It didn't feel like it was mine anymore. And the food thing I can look back at now and realize that was, really a control thing. That was the thing I could control. Nobody could make me eat. Nobody could make me do anything. And, that was the thing that I could do. And so it progressed from self-harm to this eating disorder. And I finally was just very suicidal, and I attempted. So it was 8 years ago now. The rebirth day just happened this month, the 15th. It's still October.
Congrats.
Thank you. And that happened. And when I kind of woke up from it all, and all the adrenaline and everything had passed, and I was in the hospital, I was just thinking like, that was the lowest it could be. What if we just try now? What if we just try to like make the therapy work? Because for a long time, therapy to me was something my mom put me in, like something like,
it's not by choice.
Right, exactly. And especially I felt like the therapists I were seeing, I was going to like state run things or insurance things. And so they were so overloaded, so underpaid that it felt like, I was getting switched from therapist to therapist because their
You're
caseload
like
get
on
too
a
big.
conveyor belt of mental health.
Right. And so it felt like I was either giving them a script or they were just going to take everything I said back to my mom anyway. And I didn't want to stress her out more.
Yes.
So the therapy wasn't something I was utilizing. It was just showing up for. And so after the attempt, I was like, well, what if, let's just try. Let's just see if we can actually make this count when I'm in the sessions and be honest not only with the people around me and my therapist, but honest with myself and conscious more than anything. And that changed everything for me. That's when I was working in the gym. That's when I found the group of friends for powerlifting. That's when I started to do that. I started applying to colleges because at that age I was, 17, but thinking past the age of 18 was like just a black, open space. I didn't think that I'd be that long. I didn't think I'd live that long, didn't have any goals. And so at that point, that was the light at the end of the tunnel of like, let's just give it a try. Like you did this, that didn't work.
I feel like making that decision to like choose yourself and choose that you are worth working on and working for is like the most impactful or like biggest decision anyone dealing with mental health can make. Like that day that you are like, okay, let's put in effort. It's like, it changes everyone's life. I feel like once you have that moment, that rock bottom moment.
Yeah, and like we were interviewing Rue on a previous podcast, and one thing that I see that's a theme with everybody's life and people that we interview also is that everybody has that kind of rock bottom moment, whether it's you have a divorce, whether it's like you get caught, like with Rue, she told us a story about how she got caught stealing food from a grocery store, and that's when she noticed she needed help with her eating disorder. And all of us have these moments where we have a choice.
Yeah.
We have a choice to go further into the darkness, or we have choice to look, just literally turn our heads a little bit to the right and see a little bit of light. And I think that moment is when you decided to do that. And from that moment is when like everything probably started to change for you. And look, it was probably not linear. Like we always say, fitness isn't linear. Mental health is not either. It's not pretty. Like none of this is pretty. One of my friends, Emily Hayden, says evolving is not pretty. And I'm like 100% agree.
Yes.
Because all of it seems so fancy and cool. Yes, I go to a therapist. I work on my mental health. I feel self-aware. I'm this, I'm that. Oh, girl, but it ain't pretty. I'm spending Mondays crying in my bed all day, but the benefits that come from doing all of this work is so much better than living a life feeling like you have tunnel vision, like you're not inside your body, like you don't have control, like you can't remember what happened. There's been portions of my life where I don't remember. Yeah. Because you were so separated from that. So I want you to talk about that feeling of being separate from your body, because what you do now, you have to be very in tune with your body to do what you do. So speak on that a little bit.
I'm curious, like, how long that transition took for you. Or was it like a switch that you turned?
No, it took a long time. And it was, again, like you were saying, a very painful one, because it meant that I was now having to have very difficult conversations with myself, with my therapist, with the people in my family, because I grew up not wanting to cause a scene, not wanting to be an issue, or, I thought that if I was being good, then I was just not being a pain in somebody's ass. Yeah. So that meant speaking to my mom when I was struggling, or if I needed help, or, putting emotion or words to emotion and calling it a thing, because for so long I just felt numb. I wasn't like, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling these kind of things. Yes. And just trying to be more conscious is hard. Like you're talking about the dissociation, it's a practice, and we don't often like realize that we're doing it until afterwards when we're like, oh my God. It's like when you drive home from somewhere and you're like, wow,
how did I get here?
On autopilot.
Yeah.
So that transition is lifelong, really, because I have so many bad habits from that time where I just relied on those bad habits. They still come back to haunt me no matter how healed you are. These things it's a work in progress. It's never, this is just who I am now,
Yes.
Especially with my depression. I know that it's so irrational a lot of the time. And like you were saying about it not being linear, I went through one of the worst depressive episodes I've had since I tried to commit the last few weeks, up until last week. I, like, through my rebirth day, the weeks before leading up to it, I was in the worst spot I've been in a really long time, which was very challenging because my ego gets in the way often of
I thought I was over this shit.
Yeah. Like it can be frustrating for sure.
Like, you're an adult, your life's good, you got a great partner, you run a business. Like, you don't have time for this. You don't have time to be depressed. It's not on the fucking schedule.
Yeah. And like, that's literally like how we talk about it too all the time.
We're having that conversation last night because I have been feeling that way recently too. And I don't want to speak for Kendall, but she's been feeling that way a little bit lately too, literally up until like today, and it's just been, we were talking about that last night, and it's just like, everything is great. Like, why?
Yeah. Julia was saying she's like sitting there and she's mad at herself because you're like, I should be grateful. Like, why am I still feeling like it's so annoying, but like, we also have to remember, like, those dips will never go away. And like, some of them will now be lesser. We know how to get ourselves out of it faster. Like, we have better resources now, but it doesn't mean that it's not in like the back of your mind.
Yeah. Right. And I think that that's what people think, is that once you heal, quote unquote, I think like healing is a lifelong thing. Like, we're always
healing until we go.
Until we die, because we have so much programming. And for you, like, you have so much programming from your childhood of like how to react to trauma, how you react and how you cope. And like, it's ingrained in you, and having to like unravel that and then get to a point where you're like, oh my God, I thought I was fucking over this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, damn, I thought I was done.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you ever put a label on your eating disorder, or was it just like general difficulty with food?
It was like a combination really of
multiple.
Anorexia and binge eating disorder. I would not eat, and then I would, purge and all of that. So it was really a combination of everything, because it was just stemming from control. It was like, how long can I go without eating? And, using MyFitnessPal. And back then, it's so crazy to think about, but like, there were those like pro anorexia like pages on
and I like followed all of them.
It's
and
you're
so
like,
fucked up.
This is so fucked up. And I think
crazy.
Tumblr's like banned all that stuff now. I'm not on Tumblr anymore.
No one uses Tumblr.
I hope so.
I feel like because of that.
It's like such a toxic environment.
That was crazy.
Do you feel like transitioning from powerlifting to bodybuilding, since it is a far more restrictive food sport, were you nervous, or did you end up having like kind of relapses of eating disorders at all?
I was nervous, just generally, because I know that I have recovered so much. I don't think that anybody 100% lifelong can say like, oh, I've recovered from an eating disorder, like you said, until you die, because these
It'll
are
always
still
be there.
like kind of voices in your head in occasion. But I had felt that I had such a good grasp on my eating disorder, and I had felt that the way that I was coping with my mental health when I started bodybuilding was in such a good spot, and I knew how to rely on my support system that I wasn't concerned. I had talked with my husband, and I had talked with my best friend about like, hey, here are some red flags that if you see this see this in me, please have a conversation with me. And it is my job to be honest with you guys about how I'm handling these things. And that's the only way that I can be successful in this, is if I know these red flags, and if that's the agreement, I have to talk to you about this, and I cannot do this anymore.
Which is awesome that you have that outlet too.
Thank you.
Because I imagine before you would have never said that.
No.
Like, you wouldn't, like, I can even think back to me, like, I wouldn't have never done that. Like, having that awareness to say, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, then, give me a call. Say, yo, what's up?
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Thank you. And even in prep, I was like, that's still the agreement. Like, I have, this is my 8th year anniversary, but, my 7th year, 6th year, I was like, this has been years of healing, and it's not worth it at any point. And when I was in powerlifting, I thought of bodybuilding and referred to bodybuilding as a glorified eating disorder. I was like, that's what it is. And, the more I get into it, the more I'm like, yep.
You were right.
If you don't have a handle on these things, and you don't have like a system kind of in place, then it can be a glorified eating disorder.
I love that you said that. Because I tell people, if you're not 100% committed to competing, don't compete, because there's so much stuff that comes along with it. It's a mental roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's a physical roller coaster, and the eating, it can be really, really challenging. So yes, I love that you kind of like set yourself up for success before you go. And I think that everybody should do that before they decide.
That's my
to
biggest
compete.
tip to everyone is like, number one, make sure that you are in a good enough place or like strong enough place within yourself. And then number two, make sure you express that to the people around you. Like you have to warn them almost, especially like I would assume that like your husband and friends are like also kind of in the space. I don't know if they compete or not, but like around it. But some people don't even have that. Like no one around them is into competing, and to have to like explain to them like, hey, I'm going to be like almost mentally and physically torturing myself for the next few months.
Willingly.
Like, like I need extra support. Like it's good to speak up about those things.
Yeah. I think it's really important that you have some people that you can rely on, especially in an extreme sport like this.
Yes. So what would you say is some advice to new competitors for preparing themselves before they start to do this? Mentally, physically.
I think you can even speak to people going into powerlifting too.
Yeah,
Just like taking the sport to the next level in general.
So outside of like just the extreme aspects of it, something that I've been thinking about lately and talking with some of my friends about lately is enjoying being a beginner at something. And I think especially in bodybuilding, we look at the pros and we're like, I'm not there yet. Yes. Like you don't enjoy the milestones of which your journey entails when you're just looking at the end goal. You're looking at like Francielle and you're like, I'm not winning the Olympia yet. Yeah. You're like, I haven't done my first show, whatever. And so I wish that I could go back and enjoy each part. But that's something I'm working on now with bodybuilding. When I was in powerlifting, I had always like just thought of the next thing with disappointment of like, you can bench the bar and everything now, but you can't bench 135 or like
you always want what's next. It's like never fulfilling enough.
Right. Or like, you know, I squatted 225 or squatted 300 pounds and I was just like, well, it's not this. Never being like, wow, my body did that. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
I love that you said that, because I think it was my first show ever. I did that thing where I kind of just like blacked out and I don't really remember it. And I won summer shredding, and then I won my first wellness competition like within 2 weeks. And I don't remember what happened because I was so just blind and I was focused on the end goal that I didn't get to appreciate any of these milestones. So do you feel like in powerlifting, there was a point where you kind of just like, oh, I don't even really remember like what happened, or you didn't appreciate these little milestones that were really big and you can look back on now?
Yeah. That happened so often because I, you know, not to sound like an idiot or a jerk, but I was pretty good for my age and my weight in powerlifting. And I never appreciated that fact. I never was like, I'm doing pretty good, because we think that we're not allowed to think that of ourselves.
I mean, even right now in this interview, you're still having a hard time saying like, I was fucking good.
Yeah, you were good. Own that shit.
Thank you.
Maddie was amazing and still is.
Yes. But look, it's easy for me to say that to you, but if you
It's hard to say it
I'm
to
like,
yourself.
yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like I know for me and Julia at least, and I feel like you're included, we're like painfully humble.
Yeah. And you're
It's like I will never be cocky. It's not even like an option for me.
Yeah. And you know, that just really reared its head when I was competing for the U.S. At Worlds in Sweden. It was like the first time that I had.
That sounds fun.
It was crazy. It was the first time I traveled internationally, and I traveled alone. And my luggage was lost.
No.
So all my competition stuff, everything, my contacts, I had to borrow everything
I would
from people.
freak out.
It was horrible. My husband was like up all night for days, like on the phone with like Swedish people trying to, you know, I ended up getting it like 3 days after the competition.
Wow.
But, you know,
Too late.
Right, exactly. And the competition itself was extremely hard. The judging, of course, was at international level. So it was strict. And I didn't do as well as I wanted to, but I came fifth in my class.
Which again, if you look at the grand scheme, is insane.
Yeah,
like a huge
fifth
accomplishment.
in the world
Literally insane.
My division. Thank you.
But what did you think about that?
But I
in the
wasn't
moment?
happy about that. And I look back at that experience, and like you said, I don't remember all of it. And I'm like, fuck, dude, like, this is a massive thing that not a lot of people can say that they will ever do. Yeah. And I can't remember a lot about it because I was too busy throwing myself a pity party.
Yeah.
It's hard to be present, especially in moments like that when it's like, it's also, if you really look at it, it's so much adrenaline and like you're in a new place, you're alone, you're around new people. Like it's hard to sit there. I try to now be like so conscious on show day and like get there even earlier and just like let it soak in because it feels good to like look back on. And I think that's why I love social media for the outlet of tracking everything.
Right.
Like you can look back at these memories now and have like an in-depth, like I love that I really should do YouTube, but because I love watching your show days and being like, oh shit, it's like, I mean, I was there for some of them, but it's like, oh wow, like reliving it like must feel so cool.
And I have documentation of like all of my like achievements that I've had. I have documentation of I don't. I didn't do YouTube with the summer shredding in those first two, but I wish. But yeah, and I think
maybe you'd remember them more.
Exactly. But like really what we're talking about is just being present in the moment.
Yeah.
Like so many times we're living in the past and that's what makes us
or
depressed.
too much in the future.
We're living in the future and then we're anxious. But I feel like when you're super competitive and for you were struggling a lot with depression and you were living so much in the past.
Yeah.
Because you were thinking about your dad, maybe your sister, like all these things that have already happened that you couldn't really change. And then you feel like you like, I think you did a lot of inner work and you were healing from that. And then you use this competitive outlet to kind of like really propel you forward. And then it's like, oh, but what next? But what next? But what next? And I do that so much.
I do that a lot.
I still do that. I did that yesterday. I was mad that I didn't look like X, Y, and Z, even though like I should be proud that like I'm an IFBB pro or whatever. It's just
I feel like
amazing. By the way,
thank you.
So
she was like comparing herself to like some of like the insane Brazilian girls that have been doing wellness since like birth.
Literally
and I'm like,
since birth.
I'm like,
That's their
stop.
look.
Yes.
I'm like, stop it. You look amazing. You are you, and like you need to own that shit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that to yourself.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I force it
it's
upon my
ridiculous.
friends.
Especially with social media and with the following, anybody can say whatever nasty thing they want. But you know, I see the comments that you get. Everybody tells you how amazing you look. It's really hard to believe those kinds of things, but
You're like, yeah, cool, but I'm not where I want to be.
Of course, you're not going to tell me I look like shit.
But I think that's a testament that like even someone who is the best in the world in powerlifting and like one of the top pros in wellness, like the fact that you guys still deal with self-doubt or like not appreciating, not that you guys don't appreciate where you are, but like that constant want for more, like everyone deals with it, whether you are a beginner or you've been doing this for like your whole life.
Yeah.
I don't think that ever goes away. I think we can just train ourselves to have it to a lesser degree.
Yeah. There needs to be like a balance between having that drive to know I'm not going to settle for any less than what I know my potential is. And that's how I feel every day is like, I'm not fucking settling because I know how far I can go. And I know that you both have that drive, but then also not being so deep in that there, you can't appreciate these little wins that you had.
Yeah.
Like freaking percentage of people go to Sweden for like a powerlifting, let alone
let alone top 5
and top 5. Like it's wild.
Yeah.
I've kind of been having that like existential crisis, and I was like telling Julia the other day because I've done 6 shows total. Same wellness was my first time last year. I did a local show and then nationals, and like I took this whole last year off, and this is the first time since I was like literally 16 years old where I'm not pushing a bulk or prepping, and I was like, I might be done. Like I'm having like those feelings now where I'm like, moderation is nice. Like I'm very comfortable where I am right now. And I do think like I'm young enough that like I might change my mind in another year or two. I'm constantly going back and forth, but like it's something I was so passionate about, and like all of my brain space was dedicated to bodybuilding for years. And right now it takes up like 5%. And it's hard for me to like be like, do I want to dive back into 100%? Is that healthy for me, or is this healthy for me? It's hard to make that decision too. I feel like we're constantly changing, and our physical goals can change as our mental goals do.
100%. I mean, we all go through like little seasons, kind of like how you did, where You went through a season where powerlifting is what got you through. Like it helped you.
Yeah.
And then now you're in like a season where like, oh, I might end up going back, but now I'm going to try this bodybuilding thing and I'm going to see how this works for a little bit.
If you were to pick your experience with both, which one do you think like your true passion lies? If you had to. I know it's a tough question.
It's a really tough question.
I've been looking into powerlifting. That's kind of where I was going with that. Going away from bodybuilding, I'm like, that seems like such a cool outlet to like maybe try just while I'm in this like weird off period.
To be honest with you, I don't know. And I've actually been thinking about this. And when I was going through this depressive episode, that was kind of like I was having my own existential crisis with it, because I was looking at bodybuilding and I was thinking of like, with my rebirth day coming up, I was kind of thinking of me 8 years ago. And I was like, man, would me 8 years ago be really disappointed in myself for being in bodybuilding? Like, this is a really good thing for me and I really enjoy it. But I have always wanted to push the narrative that you don't have to be small to be worthy. You don't have to be shredded to, be lovable. And do I put that on other people to feel like they need to be like that? Because I have a good grasp on it, but is that what I'm going to be known for? Like, is
that's a really interesting way to view it too.
Right. And then I started looking at, the competitive sports of bodybuilding and powerlifting and was like, at my core, is this just this objective need to be told or to be having a rank of doing a good job? Like, is that what I'm utilizing these things for? And when I'm in those depressive episodes, I just kind of question a lot. Like, my brain's juggling everything and saying, like, is this why you're doing this? Is this why? And I don't know, but I know that I really enjoy what I'm doing. And I think that regardless of like the deepest meaning of it all, I do think that it's good for my brain to have these testing moments of like
100%.
the choices of, I could use this, bodybuilding experience to be a glorified eating disorder. I could fall back into that. That's a choice.
100%.
It's not mental health isn't a choice. I'm not saying that, but
How
I can
you
choose to
look
care
at
for
things.
myself. Yeah, I can choose to have a supportive system. I can choose a lot of those things. And especially with bodybuilding, I had a lot of insecurity issues going into it. And going into bodybuilding was kind of a challenge for myself to be like, hey, you might not be the best looking there. You have to be okay with that. Like, because even, with partners and stuff, I'd feel insecure that like, maybe I wasn't like the prettiest girl they knew, or maybe my butt wasn't big enough, my boobs weren't big enough or whatever. And where this is the sport of like, you have to be okay with not being the best on stage. Like, cause that can happen. That will happen.
Out of your control entirely.
It's okay. And you know what else? The next step is being like, she looks fucking great. I love that for her. Because like those are different levels of appreciating, your competition or other women. And I think the lessons that I'm learning in bodybuilding have been greater than powerlifting, but it could also just be that I'm more receptive to being taught those things.
That all makes total sense. I feel like I've always viewed it in a similar way, and that's where my recent existential crisis is coming from too. So I like completely relate, where I'm like, why am I doing this? Do I want to continue doing this? Like all of that.
Yeah. Right. And I think these questions are so important to ask yourself, because rarely do we ever just sit there alone and we don't have anything going on. We don't have like anything that's just clouding our brain, and just sitting and asking like, why do I do what I do? Do I love what I do? Do I enjoy what I do? Do I enjoy the people that are around me? How do I feel when I do X, Y, and Z? And that's super important because like you said, I think it was earlier how where you were like, I don't really like, do I like this? Like what am I doing? Like you have that moment where you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah.
Same thing with like how you were saying you don't want to hate powerlifting. Like that's how I felt. Is I noticed in the past like 6 months, I've talked a lot of shit on bodybuilding, and I'm like, that's definitely a reflection of like my current self, because at the end of the day, I fucking love the sport, and it like has done so much for me and like fully changed my life. And like, I still don't think I'm fully done, but it's hard to differentiate like not hating the sport because you're just viewing it in a negative light, or you can choose to view it as like this positive tool to like appreciate your body. It got you the fact that you were able to test your limits and get like as lean as possible and step on a stage and like have the confidence and learn a routine, and just like every aspect of it I think is beautiful. And I was mad at myself for shit talking the sport that I love, I guess.
And that's when you really just, you need to decide what you're going to use it for and why you're going to use this for.
It's fully a choice.
You can, like you said, you can choose to use it as a glorified eating disorder where you need the praise, you need the win, you need the trophy, the recognition, or you can use it for a vehicle for transformation. I have changed so much mentally from bodybuilding than I have doing any other thing that I have done.
Every prep too is like a level up. It's
yeah.
oh wow, like I learned something new about myself this year.
Yeah. Even if I get to like a super low, that low brings me to a new level of awareness that I didn't know needed to be addressed. And you can totally use it for that.
Exactly.
And I love that you said, like, don't expect to fucking win. Because we go into competitions like, my goal is to win. It's like, maybe our goal should just be, just show up and be the best that you can fucking be.
That's how
for
I view
yourself.
Right.
And if you stick with that, you can go so far.
The only person you should ever try to beat is yourself from the last show. That's
Right.
like, I only will ever look at my own photos. We were talking on our way to Houston that we know people, and even we've done it in the past where we like look up our competitors, like who are we going to be against?
I did that so much.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, like
And?
you're not gonna like.
It's not going to change anything.
No, you're not gonna like go and hit quads tomorrow, and they're gonna be the same look as hers.
Yeah.
Like, you can't change shit right now.
Exactly.
But-
It's like a self-torture that we do,
Yeah,
or like self-sabotage
so-
of getting in our head.
So dumb. And that was a big thing for me after my last show. I had, people, I kind of missed my peak, and, I came in a lot watery, and, that
We've
week
all
leading
been
up
there.
to it. Yeah. I was really hard. I was like super conditioned. I looked great. And then getting these comments from people where they're like, oh, you should have won. You should have won. And a part of me was like, that's kind of nice. But then I was like, I thought about it, and when I talked about it on social media about the placing, I was like, the biggest thing in this sport is to be honest with yourself. And if I look at the girls that won, if I look at like the top 3 girls, can I honestly tell myself that I looked better than them? Like, that does them such a disservice to think that my opinion's better than all of these judges and everything. And while I'm sure that happens where there's, sometimes a political edge or whatever, 'cause especially with wellness where the look is changing, like we never really know.
Drastically.
Yeah. It was for me very important mentally to address that of like, those girls deserve to win. The girl that beat me, Alexis, she got a pro card. Her physique is insane. And like, I had no right to be like, I should have beat her, because she took like this last year, and I'm not even like really close with her. I just admire her a lot.
Same.
She had taken like the year off between her last shows. She grew so much. Like, you could tell that girl was so dedicated. Like she gave a shit, and you could tell that she gave a shit. And I didn't give a shit as long as she did. And that's great. Like, I can just say she deserved to win, and like truly mean that to myself. And doing that kind of let myself off the hook for not having to win. Because that's been a really big thing for me lately, is enjoying being new and enjoying the fact that I don't have to win to be good or to be worthy of anything.
Yeah. And even when you're not new, even in 5 years from now, say you're a pro and you're still competing, like, I think still going in with that mindset is like the healthiest thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
I freaking love that so much, because like, I'm trying to think of too where an instance where people would look at me and be like, you should have won. And
Social media makes it hard.
I literally went out, like, this was my last show when I was in Puerto Rico, and people, you should have won. And I literally went on my story and I was like, no, I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I was like, and this is why, because this sport is a subjective sport.
Right.
You have a different panel of judges judging you almost each time.
Yeah.
And it's people judging people. People are people. We make mistakes. We have different opinions, different styles, different things that we like. Like think about your taste in men. It's different than, like, ours are different. So it's people judging people, and it's going to be different each time. So and that's what you have to be willing to step into and say, you know what? I am going to do this. I'm going to stand up on that stage half naked and be judged on my body, and let people judge people. And that's what you just have to be okay with.
Yeah.
Who are we to say like, nah, I deserve to win? Because you never know, like you said, who you're competing next to.
Yeah.
You don't know how long they've been doing that. You don't know what they've went through. You know what you've went through, and you're like, shit, if this is just half of what I went through. Fuck.
It's so easy to like point blame or be like, well, I didn't win because of like this and that. And it's like, at the end of the day, if you showed up and like you're proud of how you did, or like if you know that you did everything you could during that prep, you should have zero regret and you should have zero levels of disappointment. I've walked away from a show in first place and a show in 8th place feeling the same. Like I don't think I've ever walked away feeling like upset. But I know a lot, like that's hard. That takes like a level of like emotional maturity, because I've also been like, my ex-boyfriend was a classic physique guy, and he came in second and like threw his trophy in the garbage. Like, just like, not to call you out if you see this, but like so dramatic. I was like, for what? I was like, first off, you're qualified for nationals. You're fine. Like, let's move on now.
Was a gun to your head to win?
No, like literally.
Is your life on the line?
Yeah.
Are they going to take your house if you don't win?
I feel like the only pressure we have is the pressure we put on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Like the expectation that you have to go into it and win. You have to go into it and be the best. Just be your best. You don't have to be the best. And that'll come. And I can like honestly say that I have given it everything that I've got on all of my shows except the last one. And I can say that now because no excuse whatsoever. I was going through a lot of shit. People know I was going through a breakup.
Literally like during peak week too. It's
my
so
peak
hard.
week, I was going through a breakup, and I let it affect my competition. I let the stress get to me. I let my emotions cloud my thing that I love so much. And I'm mad at myself for letting that happen, but I know that I'll come back and I'm going to be undeniable. It doesn't need to be first.
That's the energy.
It just needs to be undeniable. Like, I don't give a fuck what you say.
Yeah.
I know that I look fucking fire.
Hell yeah.
I love that. So
I love that for you, dude. That's awesome.
yeah. I love this conversation so much. And just to kind of like wrap things up, the one question that we always ask people is, when was the moment that you knew how powerful you really were?
We can give you a sec if you need.
Yeah, I need a second for that one.
Play the Jeopardy music.
I'll do ASMR.
Oh, please no. Taps don't bother me.
Okay.
Whispers do.
I guess I've had a couple of moments, but recently I had a really big one.
Ooh.
Love a recent one.
Yeah. Last year, I started working with a business mentor, and he asked me what my goals were for my business were, what my long-term, what I wanted to do. And for me, with my company, I wanted to have it transcend me. I wanted it to work on its own. I've always wanted to help people, and I want that to be the theme. I don't want Maddy Forberg to be the theme. I want it to have I want it to survive on its own legs, where people might not even know who I am. Like, they're just like, oh, I think she's involved. And he was like, well, why don't you hire people? And I was like, well, I don't think that I'm at that point yet.
Yeah.
And he we looked through my waiting list and stuff, and we've had thousands of people on waiting lists. And I was like, I can't take on that many people. And, there's still things I need to do as a human being. And so we started conducting interviews, and I interviewed a lot of people, and I built a really awesome team. I've got coaches for nutrition, bodybuilding, and strength training, and 2 of the 3 are in their last year of their PhD program. So they're incredibly intelligent, and our bodybuilding coach, he's just got so much experience and is such a wonderful person that they're an awesome team. And in September, I was able to have our first team retreat, and I flew them out. Yeah. And their partners came with them as well, because I was like, for our first one, let's just enjoy meeting each other. Let's have this feel like a comfortable experience, because, you always feel better with your partner around. You should. I mean, in a group, you just feel more comfortable. And it was important to me to have this sense of family. I think a lot of companies say that, but we're in this generation where we get to work from home. And so the biggest thing that we can do is make people feel like they're family, even if you're not around each other all the time. And we had a weekend full of we did some content and interviews and strategic meetings, but we also did a lot of team building and getting to know each other and enjoy. And they left there, we all left as friends. And although they work for me, I felt, very connected to them. And I had gotten some messages from them about how important that was to them. And I remember at a point during it, they were all talking and they were all joking with each other and giving each other shit. And I sat back and thought, I was able to make these people come together and make friends, and their wives are becoming friends, and like, this is important. Like, I'm making people who might not have had the platform to do what they love. They get to do that because of the shit that I went through in the ways that I was able to build myself and bring this to other people.
And
Like,
you
this
didn't
is-
even think you were capable of hiring
Right.
anyone, let
No.
alone a whole badass team.
Never. And I just feel like the best thing right now that I can do is nurture those people and make them feel like their goals and dreams are possible. I know that sounds really cheesy, but that they can work the job that they want and feel fulfilled and feel passionate. And it just felt really powerful to me that I was really in that moment able to bring people together and for them to form relationships and feel proud of themselves.
I love that. That's a really good answer.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
I like it because it's a more like businessy one, and
Yeah.
sometimes we get like a little bit of different answers. So
It's
that's
also a
really cool.
testament to like your personality of like you feeling the most powerful was interacting with these other people. It wasn't just like within yourself.
Basically, you feeling powerful because you empowered other people
Exactly.
to know their
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
If we're going to kind of break it down,
A chain of power was
Exactly.
created there.
It is powerful to like have people realize, yo, look at me. You're fucking powerful. Okay, now go do something with it.
Yeah. And for me, I was also like, I tried to kill myself years ago. I'm 25. I never thought that, like, it was always a big thing for me to have a good reputation as
Yeah.
like an athlete and a coach. And, you know, there's so much imposter syndrome around these things in social media
Absolutely.
and comparison. And I was like, man, I've got these people they're highly educated and they look to me for support. And I'm like, you know, I felt great about putting them together. And I also felt like, fucking look at me. Like, this is the
Yeah.
ultimate bad bitch thing that I could do for
Yes.
myself is like, acknowledge that I did this.
Yeah.
And sometimes we still see ourselves as like that little shadow version of ourselves, and we're like, fuck, like that shadow version can't do all these amazing things, can they? Like, it's fucking hard. That was what the voice was like, I can't hire people. What do you
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
And now you're like, fuck,
Proving yourself wrong feels so good.
Yeah.
I was in a fucking mental institution. I tried to harm myself.
Yeah.
I did this, and I now have a fucking team.
Yeah.
Past me would have been like, what?
Right.
Which is fucking really cool.
Well, and the same with starting a podcast or doing your first competition or going to the gym for the first time. Like, none of that shit happens by chance. These
Yeah.
are all strategic decisions that you decided yes to, that you put in the work for. And I think, like, you know, people don't acknowledge that as much with the things they do of like, with prep, like I did every step of that to get here. Like, it wasn't like I just, oh my God, magic. Like, I'm doing great. And like, same with business. Like, you know, I didn't just
None of
grab
it's
a couple
easy.
people and, you know,
Yeah.
it was not
was
by
a-
chance. It was
yeah.
not magic.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Maddie, for being here. sharing
No, it
your
was so nice
story.
hearing your story.
I love it. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of you. Maddie and I had this really incredible idea that we had last time we were together. I won't say it, wink, wink, but something big is
I
going
wanna
to
know what it
eventually. I'm going
is.
to tell you when we get when we get off the pod. But amazing things are coming from you. Like, I know individually with whatever you do, anything that you touch is going to touch other people. So guys, in the description, I'll have Maddie's links to her Instagram, you know, her little coaching services, so you guys can get along with like her amazing team, because you have a team of like a bunch of different kind of people. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having me,
coming.
guys. You guys are changing lives for doing this.
Yay. And we love you guys so much, and you are more powerful than you think.
Bye.